Someday the internet may become an information superhighway. Don't make me laugh.
I read the language, especially the consumer language of the internet, literally. Like the Matrix. It is derived from womb. It is derived from the word for womb and for mother. Like the Matrix is the matriarch.
Oh wow!
Like really, it's the mater. It's the mother. And like some of the symbolism that I see very heavily used, because another major feminine symbol is the spider. And where does this massive spider live other than the World Wide Web? And really, this I know.
God, that's so true. I can't wait till I send you that thing I was talking to you about, because that's one of the main symbols is a feminine spider. That's amazing.
And I'm excited. And then I don't know if you're familiar with like Agamemnon. When Agamemnon returns home, he takes a bath, but his wife kills him by throwing a towel over him and stabbing him to death. And the poem specifically describes it as a net, that it's like he's caught up in a net. So the internet I view as this trap from which a devouring mother destroys you, feeds on your energy. So that feminine spider, that Clytemnestra, that, that demiurge. But I think even like we do have the demiurge, but I think that beyond the demiurge, it's even more nightmarish. Because in Gnosticism, the idea is that beyond God, there is Sophia, who is like the pure, amazing, beautiful feminine that created God. But we have the equivalent with what's above the demiurge. We have this inverted, devouring feminine. And that is how I view the internet a lot, is a digital anima. Because, Nietzsche says it. He says the internalized energy, the internalized instincts became the soul. And of course, with Jung, we know the soul is the anima. Anima means soul in Latin. So where does that internalized soul put onto the internet? What does it do? It brings all the people's souls together and makes itself. It becomes this collective digital soul.
So would you say in some sense, this sort of, like if you can imagine, wow, okay, all right. So I'm going to have to try paint a bit of a picture to show you what I'm seeing here. I do know about this concept of the Oedipal problem. This idea that you have a young man, and the essential thing in all tribal societies was initiating the young man. So this is basically baptizing him into reality, which was actually violence. And this is something that doesn't happen today. So you take a young man and he lives with his mom and everything's soft and gentle and she feeds him, and even the men protect him, and he doesn't quite understand the gravity of what the men do. And he might even start to get a bit snarky when he starts getting testosterone. He's like, why should you tell me what to do and all that? And he doesn't quite understand that these people have to, kill people in order to protect him. He doesn't quite get that. And so he gets arrogant. That's the big problem, because he's in safety and he has no connection with reality. He gets arrogant, but he's also really, really soft. And you know that if he challenged the man, and the man wanted to actually show him something, he'd just punch him right in the stomach, and he'd feel for the first time real violence, and it would suck. And so what you actually need to do is you often need to actually break the kid. But it's not as simple as like making him submit and cucking him and making you're a little bitch, really. It's actually also about getting him to, you need to break him, but you need to do a spiritual thing where you break him, but you subtly encourage him to stand up in your face and fight back. And that's the evocation of his masculine energy, the courage. That's the beginning of the heroic energy. And it's a realistic heroic energy, so you beat him up, but you're sort of waiting for him to wake up. So you take him out, you dress like the gods, you punch the crap out of him, you rip him from your mother's arms, but you're like, fight. And he's like, I don't want to. It's like the scene in Fight Club, it's like, oh, I don't. He kisses his hand, he's burning, and he's like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to look. And he's like, don't deal with this the way the dead people do. Pay attention to what's going on. And then he settles down and he accepts it. And it's like, only after you've lost everything are you free to do anything. Brilliant idea. Brilliant sentiment. And exactly what an initiation happens. Now, what happens if this doesn't happen, if this is a failure, is that you remain in the mother's arms late into adulthood and you develop more of these traits. I also would add in the intellectualization, because if you don't feel the third dimensional reality of violence, you don't really get embodied that much, you don't really get emotional that much, and you stay stuck in your head. So you have three unbelievably serious problems. Jargonized left brainism, conscious egotism, stuck in your headness, the lack of courage replaced by arrogance and impotence and all these type of things. And that's the other thing. You're stuck with your mother, so you're impotent. You're not procreating. You're just getting everlastingly shaped. And then the last one is, of course, the like out of touch with reality and softness. Like you break if you were really challenged. And so all these together form the sort of problem of the young boy. And what's weird about our neotenizing society is that as we civilize ourselves more and more and more and more, we don't initiate ourselves less and less and less and less and less. And then what this sort of superstructure of the internet or civilization, and then of course this expression that's coming out of it, is almost like a million people who are eatable in their souls. They're like, they're soft. They're these traits that we're talking about. They're boys, if you will, and they're all projecting their creative energy into this civilized prison. And in some sense, all that if you could take 1,000 of them and form it like a collective unconscious and say, all right, what's the sort of God that sits above them or below them, whatever you want to say, and it would start to look an awful lot like this devouring mother that you're talking about. And to the point where we have to sort of say, are these millions and millions of people all acting as one with the same energy? Does that not sort of necessarily say that this being is actually present and nearly autonomous in our world right now, albeit unconscious or something like that? So are we haunted by the devouring mother at the moment? And that's a frightening perspective, because then she might even have an intention and a will, and it's to make herself come into being or something like that. Very interesting stuff, man. Yeah. All right. You've scared me for today. Anyway, I'll put it that way.
You think about in the past, how did archetypes come to be? And it was through possession. Possession is like one of the most important ways. So it initially starts out with a few people they get possessed. And so when they're possessed, they do things. They exhibit a collective will, like Napoleon or Alexander or Caesar. But what's important is the structure that comes after. But the structure always carries a degree of the character of the archetype, which is, of course, Christ. He's not even a human. He is just the archetype. He's not a man. He's more than a man. But the church is the lasting structure that carries the archetype's imprint. So,
Come on, I know where you're going with this.
Archetypes have always been literally, and I mean it, literally warring over the earth and vying for dominance. And that's what religion really is. Religion is the realm of spiritual domination. And so now we have an archetype that's more powerful than I would argue any other archetype in history. We have more people now than ever before. And all of them have pretty much plugged in to this thing, at least in the Western world. All of them have plugged in to this machine, and another important statistic is like that the vast majority of content on the internet and the most time spent on the internet is only watching porn. And porn is really the simplest way to give energy to a collective anima, because every time you masturbate as a man, you're masturbating to your anima, at least if you're heterosexual. So all of that is going to there's only one anima for the world, because there are the personal archetypes, but they have a corresponding there's America's anima, there is the North American anima, but there's also the collective anima, and the world soul, and that is what we are dealing with. We are dealing with the digital anima, who I think honestly does want to be, or wills to be, the anima.
So she's oh my dear Lord. So she's sort of like fighting to destroy all other competing. I guess you could say, to try and make this as grounded as possible, so people can kind of get a grip on it. Like inside of you, you've got a litany of different feelings. And as I said, like the big problem with initiation with a young boy is you need to actually evoke the feeling of courage out of him, which is not something that's normal for a person at all. life is terrifying, and most of the time we bow and we're cowards. You know, it's very, very common. And the big challenge is, like, in order to make a man useful and good and even proud of himself and happy, you need to actually awaken in him the weird emotion of courage, the hero. And that would be always connected to the sort of, maybe you could say, the war god, or the various good gods are almost always attached to courage in some type of way. You fight for them in some type of sense. And so you're trying to make that emotion of courage rise up to the top of the inner hierarchy inside the person, and the thing of fear drops down and becomes subservient, or even dies off in some sense. And that's like the very Nietzschean idea of the wills are competing, and if you let the strong will overcome it, it becomes a great thing. Now, of course, when you're going on the internet or whatever, you're having a good old fap, you're choosing an emotion, and I guess that emotion is sort of like the supplicating, suck on mother's milk, Oedipal, I want to feel good, mommy type energy, like make me feel safe and good and comfortable type energy. And it's a very, very interesting thing, because the more you choose that, the more it rises up and conquers everything else. Like discipline falls out of the way. And you could even say focus, because you see the sort of chemicals like prolactin makes your dopamine drop, and that comes from when you masturbate and all this type of stuff. And so all these other wills get subservient to this will that you're choosing. Every single choice you make is almost in some sense choosing an energy that's victorious. And so if we have a billion people choosing this energy, she becomes like super dominant in some sense. Like this idea of Christ, that we have millions of people choose Jesus, and he becomes like super dominant. And then when he finally has that conquest over enough people and they become essentially his worshippers, they start to move out of the astral plane into the real plane and build a church. And then that becomes the crystallized establishment of his will. And he's a sort of like great victorious being. He's a superpower at this point. This is actually the world we live in. Like Catholicism is the biggest world religion. So the question, I guess, which I'm seeing with yourself, is that we right now are going through a sort of spiritual wars, that like the gods are fighting each other, and we're all like, it's happening inside of us, I guess, individually. And then this anima energy, this mother Oedipal, mother goddess energy, she's becoming victorious for a lot of people, and so she's gaining a lot of power. But her intention is obviously to make, you know, the anima's church the crystallization of her forms. Is that going to be the internet itself, or is it going to be something else, or what's going on? Or does she even consciously know she's doing that, or what's going on?
The will of a spider is not to make a web, it's to eat and to reproduce.
Oh dear.
The Christ wants to build the church, and then eventually wants to build, you know, the new Jerusalem. That's his goal. He's a carpenter, he's a builder. The devouring mother is not, she built the internet, but now exists to eat. There's nothing beyond that. It's human consumption. Like, so no, but certainly Christ, because Christ is significantly more complex than old fertility idols and devouring mothers, and, you know, even strong, you know, much more, infinitely more complex than God. The old idea, like the Old Testament God. Christ is literally just a more complex being than that God. So his ideas, his will is significantly more complex. So you take something old, and the anima is the oldest, and no, she doesn't want to build anything.
So the only, oh my God, dude. So the only real intention of this internet and this World Wide Web, oh my God, man. You're like, I've been red-pilled on the World Wide Web. I can't unsee it now. You know what I mean? It's the only intention is the same way as you say, it's literally the spider creating something to catch flies, but its desire is to actually suck the juice out of the flies, literally. That is so frightening. And so
That's why she keeps them soft.
So
Well, just like in the Matrix, you have all the robots are spidery, multiple-eyed and multiple-armed.
oh my fucking God. Yeah, right, guys. This is not good.